Welcome everyone to Flow at Work. My name is Emma Thomas, and I am joined by Isolde Kanikani, our Transformation and OCM Delivery Lead. Welcome, Isolde.
Hi, thank you, Emma. Great to be here.
We have another topic in the continuation of our digital transformation series. Today, we're going to be talking about strategic transformation roadmaps. So we're going to be talking about what they are, why they're necessary. So let's jump in. Isolde, I would love for you to start by explaining what is a transformation roadmap.
Well, I think maybe starting from the beginning, I think a lot of our customers, when we're going into the situation, they're actually not really aware of how their different projects fit together. They're struggling sometimes to put the pieces together in a way that's actually on a strategic level, going to make a difference both to the efficiency of the actual projects that are in hand, but also to think on things like just a question actually, do we have a clear vision of what we're doing here? Often you have very clear strategic level goals that we're pulling on, or even just at the project level, a clear outcome that we're trying to achieve. But we struggle quite often with this idea of, okay, so how do we translate that into the point on the horizon so that we can get there in a more profound way? So deciding what that as is state is so important. Getting an idea about where we are starting from is going to help us to understand the tools that we have available, the current maturities that are relevant to the topic, and then really clarifying that vision. So the to-be state, where are we going to? So that point on the horizon just talked about. And that's where actually then this roadmap can really come in place. So the roadmap is essentially around matching up this A to B story, this as is state to the to be state. So what are we actually envisioning? What do we need to achieve for our companies or for our clients? And then to actually start to look at, okay, what are the pieces to get us there? What are the different projects that we maybe want to initiate? Where are the dependencies? Because quite often if you just simply start 5 projects together, they might actually influence each other. Particularly if you zoom in on the stakeholder level, maybe you have 5 stakeholder groups and 5 different projects which are impacting all 5 stakeholder groups. This is a worst case scenario, but it can happen. And then we wonder why, okay, the projects are not really going ahead, or people are having a struggle with time, or they can't attend trainings because of actually that they need to do something for another one of these projects. So this idea of the roadmap is really streamlining the process of getting to A to B. And that's the really important thing. It's not just having a roadmap, but it's about intelligent decision making on a strategic level to really make sure that we get to that to be state in the most effective way that we can.
Yeah, what you said, I mean, I have seen it countless times, I think, on projects, right? Where we're trying to work with a customer's project team. We're hearing feedback that they have so much on their plate, maybe having a hard time prioritizing calls or various work. And, I think there's sometimes that disconnect, right, between the people that are signing their teams up for projects and the people that are actually on the projects themselves. Um, I'm curious if you have any thoughts around what are some common factors or indicators that you have witnessed or observed that would be why people or companies get lost when they're starting transformation work?
Because I think it's if I look back at some of the situations, I think it comes down to that we tend to operate on assumptions quite often of different things, and these assumptions can be anything from, okay, an organization is organized. We can assume that everything's connected in the right way, that people are communicating in the right way, but actually with the larger the organization, the more likely there are to have quite serious silos, to have situations where processes are out of date. So we're not communicating in the way that we need to communicate in order to do the things that we need to do, or at least not efficiently. So in these situations, actually, quite often comes about that you can forget stakeholder groups, for example, or you don't quite know where they are because you just cannot tangibly get hold of them. So I think in this process, what quite often happens is that we have a lot of assumptions or biases sometimes, things that we come with where we assume that everything's good, and therefore we'll just get going. And it's usually when you get going without preparation that you realize, oh, hang on a second. So there's this that needed to be communicated. There's this that needed to be organized. We forgot that stakeholder group. That was a really important one. But further than that, quite often projects are organized lower down in the organization on an individual project level to meet a specific need. And unless the organization is operating on that strategic level or tactical level, where they're actually coordinating these projects effectively, that can be through transformation office, that can be through a PMO, or any of the other versions of that. You've got like VMO, so value management office, or strategic project office. There's a lot of variations these days who are trying to address this. But if these organizations are not able, for whatever reason, to properly organize, then you will find that actually there's most often not a roadmap in place. And it really takes some investment at the same time. So that's the last part of the story, is really that we don't want to prepare too much, because that also takes time and investment. And quite often we need to go fast. We need to deliver. We have limited resources and time. So it's really about kind of just getting going and making a sort of stamp, so to say. So I think in the end, if we can, I always suggest prepare to run. So you prepare really well, and then you can sprint the whole way through the project or program. But if you don't do that preparation phase, you will always see a lot of roadblocks along the way.
Yeah. When you were mentioning the stakeholder groups and, that's a very common foundational change management activity. I think the bureaucracy of these large organizations and the fact that they do work in silos also means they may not even know who the stakeholders are. I've certainly run into that where, all of a sudden there's this group of people who's, either needs to be trained or communicated to in some fashion. And I had never even heard of them, And so I think that, yes, that makes so much sense. So I'm curious, if we now pivot a little bit and think about what guidance we would give to companies who are interested in creating a transformation roadmap. Maybe my first question for you would be, what are some ways or things they can do to ensure that cross-functionally, across business verticals, that different departments and teams are represented in the transformation roadmap?
This is a great question. I think it's also a challenging one, in the sense that I think if it was easy, we would do it every day in organizations. So I think that's very fair also to put that out there. But in a way, what I've come to more and more, I used to earlier try and get everybody in the room at the same time. But sometimes you do need to just start somewhere. So getting that vision clear as to why at the right level of the organization. So you really need to be talking to your sponsor. So the person who can actually make decisions around the transformation high enough in the organization, who can actually connect all of the moving parts, whether that's through having further sponsors at different levels or getting the budgets involved, etc. But you really need to have this kind of conversation first with this person, or people. It can be more people. And so basically to really get that vision clear. And once you've got the vision clear, you can then start to communicate with people. Because if you don't have it clear what you're doing, it's very hard to then cohesively and coherently really talk to people around what it is, and also to get them on board with it. So by having that vision, you can also start thinking about what's in it for me messages. You can start thinking about, okay, who does this vision impact? So then you can start to think, okay, I need to bring these people on board. I need these people. If it's an organization-wide change, I would also do a sponsor analysis. We have a lot of middle managers, direct reports of people. And these are the preferred senders of any information which is really of a personal nature. So actually within the scheme of a transformation, they're often forgotten. But they are vital for profoundly making that transformation work. So getting those people on early really helps. And like anybody, I think you can also understand, you get told some news and sometimes you need to let it absorb. So if you tell them 2 days before they need to do something, they're much less likely to do it than if you tell them a couple of months before, and they can give feedback and get on board with it. So I think these are really good first steps. And it maybe sounds a little bit people orientated and maybe a little bit wishy-washy even, but the foundations are simply get clear on your vision, and really then get clear on who is impacted, who do you need to get on board, and do any kind of assessments that are necessary to do that. So to gather the information that you need to really get them motivated about what it is that you're trying to achieve. And if you've got those things in place, then you've got a great foundation for a roadmap.
Yeah. And something you just said made me think of our first conversation on this topic. And I think when we talk about digital transformation in general, there is this, not emphasis, but there's a focus a bit on how does technology play a role in our transformation of our ways of working. But I love what you just said is that, we were talking about the transformation roadmap, and you said it seems like it's very people focused. But I think that's a key element because as we get more, as technology becomes more embedded into our day-to-day lives, we can't forget about the people. And I think so many IT individuals and leaders that are signing on to these projects, they put so much emphasis on tools and systems and applications, and they hope that just by, spending money on a new application that it's going to solve their business problems. But they're forgetting about the people. And so that's why I'm so passionate about, change management and digital transformation, because I think it weaves the people into the narrative. Um, so I'm curious, in experiences that you've had with organizations building transformation roadmaps, what are some questions that you either ask of the organization or you ask them to ask themselves? What should they be seeking to answer when they're building their transformation roadmap?
I think it's quite specific to the actual situation and the organization. I think that that's something which is good to put out there, but actually the approach is quite similar in each circumstance. So I really believe in these kind of discovery sessions where you're giving enough time to not come with the solution, but really look at, okay, what is it that we're trying to solve, and to understand that on a really deep level together with the customers or clients, however you want to call them. So it's actually our first moment of really partnering with them to create something which is more profound. So I think that process is a really important one. So entering into this discussion where also creating psychological safety, creating this space where we can really open up, and saying, instead of, hey, dear customer, how can I bring my technology solution to you? And this is how we're going to do it. It's to really say, hey, dear customer, how can we help you to solve whatever strategic goals you're trying to realize, pain points that you are feeling currently that are driving this, and any other motivators. And if you can establish this at the core, you always get enough information to at least start to create that basic roadmap. And worst case, maybe you spend a bit more time to dig deeper if you realize that actually some of the answers just still not there. But that process is a really important one.
That makes perfect sense to me. I think my last question for you on this topic today would be, what are some common pitfalls that you see? Transformation roadmaps gone wrong. What would you tell companies to try to avoid when they're building a transformation roadmap?
There's a couple of tips here. I think one is the basis of getting that roadmap into place is fairly simple. Actually, it's not rocket science, and I think a lot of people can do it. So that basic is something that I think a lot of people can really get in place. Where we tend to kind of forget there, or we kind of assume that it's simple, we forget that actually there's this extra possibility. So how we actually arrange that roadmap is actually quite strategic in many ways. Depends a little bit on the situation and the level of transformation that you're working with and the number of moving pieces. But in the end, we can be really quite intelligent about how we organize this roadmap. So a roadmap can have 0 intelligence, or it can have 100% intelligence. And I think the second tip I would always say is to realize that with the speed of change that we're experiencing and how organizations are shifting with that constantly, don't put your vision too short of the end goal. What I mean by that is that, say you build this most beautiful, you have this these plans to build the most beautiful building in the world. It's like really modern. It's like cutting edge. But if you say, okay, we're building this cutting edge building right now with the current technology, it's going to be outdated by the time that you can achieve this beautiful, what was intended to be a beautiful cutting edge modern building is now maybe 2 years or 5 years out of date. And actually then you need to actually start to really plan for this. So keeping the future in mind and saying, well, look, if this project is going to take 5 years, so this transformation roadmap, that's the end goal. We need to be envisioning what it's going to be in 5 years' time, and maybe even 10 years' time, to really make sure that we're hitting that goal, rather than falling back on this. I think a common trap that I see is that the tool is it's no longer worth what we thought it would be worth, because of the time it takes to achieve it. And projects are always delayed. There's always things that happen. So you always have to kind of move around a little bit as you get there. So that would be a big consideration. So simple roadmaps there's a lot more that we can do strategically for getting to A to B. And there's also just keep in mind, the journey takes time, and what we're trying to achieve can also be outdated by the time we get there. So think big, and take small steps.
I love it. I love it. To end with a quote from one of my favorite authors, Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind, right?